Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Veda Vaishnavi. I am a research intern at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. On behalf of the Institute of Chinese Studies, I extend a warm welcome to all to today's Wednesday seminar titled India-East Asia Partnership in Shaping the Trajectory of New World Order, Opportunities and Challenges. Today's seminar traces the evolution of India's engagement with Southeast Asia and the Far East from the Look East policy of the early 1990s to the more proactive Act East policy of 2014. The presentation explores the various dimensions of the strategic relationship, spanning trade, security cooperation, infrastructure development, and people-to-people ties, and examines India's participation in the East Asia Summit, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, and the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative as significant pillars of this engagement. The discussion also situates these partnerships within the context of the emerging world order, assessing the opportunities and complex challenges in ensuring peace, stability, and geostrategic equilibrium in the Indo-Pacific and Greater Indian Ocean region. The speaker for today's seminar is Professor Devashish Bhattacharya. He's a professor of international relations at SGT University, Gurugram, where he also served as founding dean of the School of Humanities, Social Sciences, and Liberal Arts. His co-authored book, GST and Its Aftermath, Is Consumer Really the King, published by Sage Publications, is a globally recognized work bridging academia, industry, and public policy. He was a member of the India Scholar Delegation to China in 2024 for Chapter Diplomacy, and his foreign policy writings have been published by the Vivekananda International Foundation and the Observer Research Foundation. The chair for today's seminar is Professor Sandeep Mishra. He's a professor for Center of East Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He is also an honorary fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies. He's a distinguished fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, non-resident fellow at Sejong Institute, and global fellow at Ewha Women's University, South Korea. His research interests include Korean politics, international relations, and East Asia and Korea. North Korean nuclear issue, East Asian security, and India-Korea relations. Before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you. I now hand over to the chair. Over to you, Professor Mishra.
Thank you, Veda. Good afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure to be chairing this session because it's a very important discussion which we are going to have today. We are having Professor Devashish Bhattacharya, who is going to talk about India-East Asia partnership in shaping the trajectory of New World Order, opportunities and challenges. The topic is important because I think most of us are aware that for a very long time, there have been discussions that the gravity of international economic order, at least, has been shifting towards East Asia. When I'm saying East Asia, because I looked at the abstract, I think probably he's going to include Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia both together. This region has been a very, very economically dynamic region. There are lots of fractures, there are lots of, you can say, sparks, lots of, you can say, security, other concerns. But if you look at the economic dynamism of this region for last at least 3 decades, actually more than that, I think it's really remarkable. And that's why I think if you look at out of, I think, global GDP, I think this part of the world has been contributing a lot, almost 1/3 of the global GDP. It's a very important reason economically, and that must be, I think, studied. Secondly, I think in security and strategic domain also, arguably, the most important contest is happening between US and China. Several scholars, they talk about power transition theory, they talk about China replacing United States and so many things. But this process is also going to be played out largely in this region. And that's why I think two big emerging power as well as existing power, they are contesting in this region. And that also makes this country, this region divided, but at the same time, very significant for everyone. So these are the economic and security strategic importance of this region. And probably India has identified, at least the first part, India has realized quite early. I think in early 1990s, we started economic cooperation with this region, and we had started India's Lucas policy. This Lucas policy, again, it has two variant. First 10 years, Lucas policy 1. The second, actually, around 2004, we had another variant of Lucas policy, which is called Lucas policy 2, where I think we brought in the scope of agenda as well as scope of the reach out to countries. 2014 was a very, very significant year because the third version, which was named differently also, it was called Actis policy, started by India. And India had been continuously for last 12 years through its Actis policy had been getting engaged with East Asian countries. I think this partnership is important because, as I told you, the region itself is very, very, you can say, important. And India's partnership, how come India is going to have a presence in this region? What kind of East Asian country they are looking for, you can say, India's role in this region? I think these are going to be very important in deciding future trajectory of this important region in the world politics and world economy. So we have a very renowned and very, I think, accomplished scholar with us, Professor Bhattacharya. Professor Bhattacharya is basically, no need introduction. He has written about different issues in translations. So without taking more time, I'll give it to Professor Bhattacharya. He can speak for around 30-35 minutes, and then we can go for question answers. So now, Professor Devasis Bhattacharya.
Thank you, Professor Mishra. It was delightful to meet with you online and for your initial briefing. I'm humbled by Professor Mishra's introduction about me. Now, as Professor Mishra has already elucidated, that this is a very important topic in the sense that when I was given a choice how to really configure today's lecture, so keeping in mind that I am coming to the Institute of Chinese Studies, whether I should confine it to India-China relations or to broader perspective. And then Southeast Asia is one of the major components, but at the same time, East Asia becomes a larger domain for opening up the discussion because, of course, India's Act East policy and starting from the Lucas policy 1992 and then getting revamped into an Act East policy in 2014 has made it even a bigger component in its scope, extensiveness, nature, dimension, and every way. So next slide, please. Keeping in mind that we are entering into a phase. Next slide. Okay. No, previous slide. The genesis of this has been that now there have been, after 2014, there have been a few strategic changes in our foreign policy. One is the neighborhood policy, which came up in a very big way, but at the same time, extended neighborhood policy. And India, East Asia basically comes under the extended neighborhood, but then there are some strategic geographical boundaries in that. When we are speaking about the extended neighborhood, Southeast Asia comes in the beginning, and then it stretches into the East Asia domain, where Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Far East also come into the domain. Now, one important thing is that when we are speaking about 21st century as the century of Asian progress, or it's an Asian century, we really say that this part of the world, that is the Eastern Hemisphere, which covers from, you can say, to some extent, India can be a strategic point of demarcation, but at a little bit to the west also, to some extent, keeping in mind that the current West Asia imbroglio which is going on, that is one very recent component. But at the same time, as the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has already deliberated in the 2018 Shangri-La summit, that the entire Indo-Pacific for India's consideration as a foreign policy starts from Eastern Africa to the Western Pacific, that is the Eastern Africa boundary of the Indian Ocean, to the entire Western, stretching to the Western Pacific, so that it covers a very large boundary, which is the larger or the greater Indian Ocean region, then the Indo-Pacific, which is at the confluence of the Indian Ocean as well as the Pacific, greater Indian Ocean and the greater Pacific. And that covers the entire geographical domain of East Asia, which is not only Southeast Asia, but also the countries which are lying beyond Southeast Asia and stretching into Korea, South Korea, then Eastern China, of course, and then, Cambodia, not Cambodia, we can say Japan, Australia, New Zealand, the Oceania part actually. So those Mongolia is also there. So this is a region where India has had been a lot of historical civilization and cultural linkages also. If we see the Silk Route, that was also one of the regions, and way back during the Ashokan Mauryan Empire, we had trade relations, sea trade, and later on also under various empires, there have been sea trade relation with the East Asian community, keeping in mind that yes, Southeast Asia was at the central or at the transition line between East Asia and India, the bigger Indian subcontinent. So the 1992 Look East policy was initiated by Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, and that focused initially on sectoral dialogue with ASEAN countries. So it started in a limited form. And then the second phase happened, as Professor Mishra already told, in 2004. And then in 2014, it got revamped in a big scale and got launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, expanded the ambit to political, strategic, and cultural dimensions. Of course, cultural dimension was there throughout, but still it got an emphasis in 2014 under the overall ambit of the Act East policy. And also Act East policy, one of the major reasons of Act East policy was to highlight the northeastern part of India as the gateway to Act East policy, because Northeast, that is the 8 northeastern states, the sister northeastern states are having geographical proximity with the Southeast Asian countries, at least Myanmar, and then Thailand and neighboring countries. And then there was also a very well-defined 2016 to 2020 plan of action with Southeast Asia, and then 2021 to 25 to further embolden the agenda of 2016-2020, and now 26 to 2030. The vision statement is also there. The next slide, please. Keeping in mind that, as I was speaking earlier, that the Northeast gateway to the East, the prosperity of India's northeastern states depends on the vibrant interaction with Southeast Asia because of the proximity. And that is also the springboard to the Indo-Pacific. And there has been major investment opportunities. But before I go into the nitty-gritties of the economic paradigm, I wanted to also say that India has very strong cultural links with Southeast Asia going back to antiquity. The folklore of the eastern coastal states of India is replete with stories of travels to bountiful countries in the east. The temples of the monasteries of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Borobudur in Indonesia, Champa Kingdom in Vietnam, and Swedagon in Myanmar. These are the reminiscent of India's great cultural and historical, as well as to some extent spiritual, religious extension and relations with this region. And Suvarnabhumi, that is the Thailand, today's Thailand, the Golden Land, is a term frequently used for this region. And I think many of you have already seen that in Bangkok airport, that is the Suvarnabhumi airport, international airport, there is a big, kind of what I will say, the Samudra Manthan architecture is there, very explicitly shown at the terminal where people are deboarding the flight, okay, at the time of arrival, but in their own way. and the name of the official airlines of Indonesia is Garuda. So there are deep cultural linkages with this part of the world with India. So automatically the affinity as well as the democratic paradigm in this area, except China, those institutional affinity, cultural relations, strong people-to-people contact from for about thousands of years, and also the proximity, geographical proximity. These are strong linkage factors which keep on going in becoming a in transforming this already available long-standing relation into a very resilient, robust, and you can say far-reaching relationship between the two sides. Next slide, please. So the civilizational culture contact I have already told, spiritual the legacy, the land of the middle path, and the Buddhist folklore. Even Ramayana and Mahabharata are also, played very frequently in Indonesia. Some of the places in Indonesia, Philippines, also in Thailand, and the connectivity folklore activities in these areas. Next slide, please. So the overall one part of today's this discussion or deliberation, it's a very big topic. So I will confine it to some of the important areas. I cannot cover the entire India-East Asia relations in 30-35 minutes. Difficult to cover because each and every aspect is so detailed and big. But I will try to cover small areas from each component, whatever I am in a position to do in this time frame. The continuous and consistent transformation evolution of India's lookist policy in the early 1990s to actist policy in 2014 marked a significant revamp in the ambit, scope, and extensiveness of New Delhi's strategic priorities and engagement with Southeast Asia and East Asia. One of the aspects here is also that this entire transformation is happening at a time when 2008, the great economic recession happened. And the western side, the western hemisphere, which is regarded to be the so-called mainstream developmental hemisphere, economic development, the advanced developed countries, the global north community, is stagnated. And there is a saturation point. But the global south, which is basically the emerging and very fast moving emerging area of the globe, is entirely lying. All the countries in this area belong to, except Japan, belong to global south. Keeping that in mind, this is a very dynamic zone or area where the concentration of economic powerhouse of the world in the 21st century, as well as military and defense perspectives, are also growing up rapidly as compared to the Western. And there is some kind of stability, keeping in mind that, yes, Indo-Pacific is very volatile because of there are some specific reasons for that, geopolitical reasons. But apart from that, the countries themselves are stable, democratically well-founded, and they have got affinity to each other in a very strong bonding, in the sense that they have people-to-people contact as well as cultural relations. So these are some of the very important aspects which further metamorphose and compound the willingness of the countries to come together and work in unison. The constant metamorphosis of this dynamic and robust relationship is based on mutual trust, respect, and understanding of the emerging challenges in the region, having wide ramifications in shaping the trajectory of the New World Order. And the New World Order itself is also very abstractly getting evolved. So there is no specific predefined way we can project the New World Order because of the unpredictability in the greater world system. Next slide, please. So the India-ASEAN strategic partnership, which is one of the central areas of focus in the East Asia, India-East Asia partnership, is epitomizing centrality of ASEAN in India's extended neighborhood policy. The focus here is to work some of the specific areas is to ensure peace, stability, and maritime security in the Indo-Pacific and Greater Indian Ocean Rim, particularly in the Strait of Malacca and the South China Sea, which is constituting one of the busiest sea trade route in the world. And we can easily see that if there is a disruption of a very important sea trade route in one of the regions, in this context, I'm talking about the Hormuz Strait, then it has geopolitical ramifications globally. So this is also one of the most volatile and sensitive sea trade route. Second is the expanding strategic and community cooperation to newer dimensions. And when we are speaking about strategic and security cooperation, we are also bringing the technological security, the cyber security, and other aspects into this, just not the plain military and defense security. Infrastructure development leading to some, which will lead to some stable, robust, reliable, resilient supply chain. And this has become more important in the aftermath of COVID-19. Strong people-to-people contact, and the overall structure of this relations, India, Southeast Asia, and now we have a India, Southeast Asia summit level meetings also going on every year, annual meeting, inclusiveness, sustainability, and shared economic progress. So this is one very important aspect of our relationship, the overall relationship of India-East Asia relations. Next slide, please. And this continues a little bit because there are some significant concerns between the 10 ASEAN countries and India about the openness, inclusiveness, rule-based international system, freedom of navigation, territorial sovereignty, integrity. Most of these countries are having some kind of concern about territorial integrity because of the Chinese domination, or you can say expansionist, or you can hegemonistic posturing in this particular area. So they want that maritime dispute should be settled in conformity to 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And the Act East policy, there is another major component of Act East policy, which India led component, and that is the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, which was announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2019 in the Bangkok East Asia Summit, that this is also going to bring the Southeast Asian countries initially, and also the East Asian countries, to really create a kind of a cooperation or an alliance which will create stability and maritime security and economic stability, as well as prosperity, shared prosperity in the region. Not directly confronting with China, but yes, the intent is that to make the region more stable and in a position to really withstand any external hegemonistic pressure. Next slide, please. Now I come to some of the components of East Asia. These are not the all, everything is here, but still containing China's expansionist posture, securing vital sea trade routes, is ensuring maritime security, which is a big one, actually, a central pillar of this. And the first two are interlinked. India's vision of a free, open, stable, peaceful, and inclusive Indo-Pacific, India's active participation in East Asia Summit and Indo-Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, along with leadership role in Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, are significant pillars in strengthening the strategic linkages between India, Southeast Asia, and East Asia, leading to reliable and impactful engagement, having far-reaching ramifications in shaping the emerging world order or the new world order. And of course, Quad Alliance is also there, which is going to create some kind of a antithesis to an expansionist or a hegemonistic policy by China. And then AUKUS is also there, which is India is not a part of that, but still it has got some military ramifications. Quad is regarded to be a force of global good. Next slide, please. So India-Pacific Oceans Initiative is a very important aspect. In my opinion, if we are discussing about East Asia, because there are some countries in Southeast Asia who have directly inclined towards joining, and they have already joined, and they are lined up with India. They have got conformity with India's understanding of how this particular policy will address the regional disputes, you can say, and create stability. But at the same time, there are some other countries like there is a trilateral engagement between India, Indonesia, and Australia. They also have inclination in Indonesia, of course, is a partner in IPOI, but Australia is leaning towards it. South Korea is also coming and leaning towards or aligning towards IPOI, even if they might not be formally members, but they are having consonance with this strategic policy. And the plan of action of 21-25 is also quite comprehensive in bolstering all these and emboldening all these components of this relationship, which is India's East Asia relations. Next slide, please. Okay, so the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, this was one of the areas which I wanted to really also focus, because of the fact that generally when we are speaking about whenever I read literature, I find that this topic is not highlighted that much. So I thought that let me bring, because there are so many other things which are highlighted in various discussions. So this is one area which is also an area of my research, the maritime security, maritime ecology, because ecology and environmental diversity, biodiversity is very much, you can say, blue heritage, sharing that that's maritime blue heritage. That is very important. That co-sharing and shared progress coming from that particular component. And of course, maritime security, maritime resources, deep sea exploration, there is natural resources, sustainable exploration of blue economy resources, as well as towards the main component here is green technology, harnessing green technology and clean energy, trade and transportation, enhancing connectivity through maritime corridors. And these components, particularly maritime security, maritime, all these have direct ramification on the territorial integration of the Southeast Asian countries. And this has also got some amount of linkage with the China, Taiwan, United States trilateral axis, because that is also a very sensitive area. So capacity building, disaster risk management, and because this is also a region which is prone to tsunami, earthquakes, as well as volcanic eruptions, and science and technology cooperation. Next slide, please. So special strategic partnership. Now, Japan is a very important partner in our Act East Asia overall philosophy. I will finish this entire discussion deliberation in another 5 minutes with Japan, South Korea a little bit. I am having. Then I'll end with China, and then I have discussed about Southeast Asia. So many other things can be deliberated, but I will restrict the discussion overall ambit. So the relationship with Tokyo has evolved into a matured partnership based on convergent geopolitical interests. Japan is a key partner in the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, and the gateway, as we have discussed earlier also, Northeast India as the hub of Act East policy, defense synergy in co-development of military hardware. So China has Japan is interested towards that. And of course, during the meeting with the then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a lot of discussion about co-development of military hardware, and that is still going on. I mean, because the current leadership in Japan is also inclined towards that. And connectivity, India-Japan Act East Forum infrastructure. So Japan is a major partner, and it is also an alliance in our Quad conglomeration. The next slide. And then the joint strategic vision of 2026-2030. So there is a consistency in the strategic vision in the India-ASEAN strategic vision. And we can see that the special strategic partnership also includes Republic of Korea, that is South Korea, in the industrial dynamism and supply chain resilience, cutting edge technology in semiconductors and AI, and then Korea, India Defense Accelerator kind of propositions, as well as preferential trade agreement with South Korea. Next slide, please. And with Korea, we are having some key strategic initiatives in the form of um, uh, steel manufacturing, POSCO, JSW integration, green steel making in Odisha, 6 million metric tons. Shipbuilding is another area where we are looking into deep cooperation or stronger cooperation with South Korea. Digital, Indo-Korea digital bridge, and AI related data governance and semiconductors, and ISRO and CASA joint group, satellite navigation and space startups. So these are some of the developments which are happening on synergies, apart from many more. Next slide. And the overall end result or the end objective is to make sure that there is geostrategic equilibrium in the larger Indian Ocean region, keeping in mind that it is having a direct access to the vast waters of the Pacific, and in between the Indo-Pacific is also there. Freedom of navigation, commitment to UNCLOS, I have already discussed earlier. Counter-terrorism measure is very important because that is omnipresent everywhere in different parts of the world, and cyber terrorism, counter-insurgency, cross-border terrorism, these are very important aspects. Cyber security, that is one aspect of tremendous concern, keeping in mind that there are countries which are clearly using this as a kind of uh, taking intelligence from other countries. So intelligence sharing with the like-minded countries on security matters, the cooperation, alliance, these things are important to really combat the problems of cyber security threats. And then maritime domain awareness, expanding Malabar exercises, and Japan, America, India trilateral synergy, because America is also coming and getting associated with this particular region because of the dynamism of Indo-Pacific, and as well as countering China, containing China, and keeping in mind that Taiwan is a access point here as well. And then the next slide, please. So some of the ASEAN-India trade trajectory, minerals, critical minerals is one of the aspects. Minerals, definitely, mineral fuels, but at the same time, critical mineral. For example, very recently, thorium has been, India is, there has been a discovery that India is the largest deposit, has the largest deposit of thorium, which is used for nuclear power. So such kind of China is, of course, having 70% of critical minerals of the world. So that has got, it takes the leverage of that, advantage of that. But at the same time, various parts of the world are also having critical minerals. Brazil is having a big deposit of critical minerals, the entire African continent. And that way, the G20 summit, which happened, it is slightly outside this discussion, but then the entire African Union is also a member of our G20 community. So that way it is becoming expanded. I mean, there are intersections which are going beyond the specific regions. Machinery and pharmaceuticals, that these are some of the areas which are really making a big impact in this relationship between India and East Asia, particularly in the context of ASEAN-India trade trajectory. I think this is the last slide, and try to cover as much as possible in a limited time, but it's a very big topic. So I think I should stop here at this moment.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. I think it was very extensive topic. I can understand. And you flagged certain areas which are important in this discussion. So I think I would request audience to please either write your question in the chat box, or you can come and ask. You can ask audio, you can ask video questions. So please make up your mind, think about your questions. And I will begin, actually I have few questions, but I will begin with two small questions. In the abstract which has been circulated, I saw that there is a word Far East. It has been used. So was it mistake or do you deliberately use it? One. And two, in presentation also there was a Quad alliance. Do you feel that Quad is alliance or would be alliance or whatever? So why this use of the word? So these two words and then we'll start.
Yes, this was a little bit of an oversight which happened that Far East. Basically, I wanted to keep it East Asia. So in my this particular script, I have
Yes.
rectified that as East Asia
Yeah. Throughout your
instead of
presentation,
Far.
you're consistent. True.
Yes, yes.
So that
So
was
and
mistake.
yes, I deliberately
Just for everybody
did not.
clarification. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So it is East Asia. This was not Far East, but it was a you can say an oversight which missed out the attention at that time. And regarding Quad, it's a grouping of 4 countries, of course, and the purpose is to create stability, maritime security, and there is a larger context in that. Intent is to contain the hegemonistic design of China. Uh, so I still fight with this, or I have a conflict in mind about whether I should call it as an alliance or not an alliance. Uh, I have written it as an alliance, but it is up for discussion and further deliberation. It may not be an alliance. I'm not very sure about that, but it's a grouping where 4 countries are collaborating for a common cause.
Okay, I'll ask my question later. I think 2 questions have come. So Ritika, you want to ask the question? Or maybe Veda can read it. Acha, Ritika,
I'm Nita.
Veda can read it, yeah.
Given that several ASEAN states are themselves major contributors to marine plastic pollution and illegal fishing, how does IPOI handle the tension between environmental protection goals and not appearing to lecture sovereign partners?
This is a question.
Yes.
Can you repeat the question because the sound was not very clear? Or if you can type it, I can then read, in the chat box, I can just.
It's there on the chat.
It's
It's
there
there
in
on the
chat.
chat. Given it is
Ritika.
Ritik Mandal's question.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, given that several ASEAN states are themselves major contributors to maritime. This is also a matter of, I'm happy that it has been brought out in this. Definitely, there has been an overall concern about environmental pollution in the form of plastic pollution and illegal fishing in the maritime domain, particularly in this part of the world, because most of the countries are uh, prone to seafood, and at the same time, plastic is becoming a major curse for the whole world as far as environmental pollution is concerned. Yes, there is a requirement for, IPOI should address, in my opinion, in a more robust manner in the agendas that this will be one of the areas of concern, of mutual concern, and that should be reduced as much as possible, keeping in mind that Paris Agreement and other various kinds of multilateral agreements are there where the countries are committed to make sure that there is the environmental degradation is happening to the lowest extent or bringing it down. So surely there is a need for the countries who are members of IPOI as well as the larger community in this region to be more proactively finding a solution to this and minimizing this or reducing and eradicating this from in a very time-bound, time-sensitive manner. I do agree with this question and this point.
Professor Srimati Chakravarti, ma'am, you want to ask?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, simple question. After the Trump-Xi summit, does Quad have any significance?
This is, yes, this current unpredictability of the changing new world order, you can say, because China and USA or the United States they are regarded to be the competitors now, two major superpowers. Definitely, US is the established superpower, but China is also increasingly becoming a superpower status. And this kind of bonhomie, which is also dilutes the quad dynamics to some extent, keeping in mind that one of the grouping countries, United States, is coming closer to China in terms of its relationship. Now, how China is serious about this, that is a different thing, but US is has shown its inclination to heighten its relationship, embolden its relationship with China, elevate its relationship. So this is there. To that extent, I think it definitely has an impact on Quad, keeping in mind that one of the partner countries in Quad is coming closer. Now, I will also bring in this context another point that with the relationship between India and the United States also quite volatile, and it changes it has been changing very frequently over the last few months, even on a, you can say, 15-day time span, and India coming very close to China with the one of the summits very recently, where we were seeing that India, Russia and China coming very close, and India is moving towards or planning to open up to counter United States, in the sense that because there is a rift between India and US. There has been prior to the free trade agreement signed, not even signed even now. Again, then where is Quad heading towards? So that is also another aspect that how to really deal with the configuration of Quad, what will be its objective, and how relevant it will be. There now is becoming a question of relevance also. So these are some of the important questions to be answered.
Next question, Soumya Soni, you want to ask? Okay, Veda, you can read it.
Soumya Soni asks, even though India has civilizational linkages with Southeast Asia, it hasn't been able to penetrate into the region as well as China did. What are the barriers behind this? Are India's Act East policy and IPOI sufficient to overcome these barriers?
How can the India
Basically, she's asking that even though we had historical cultural connection with Southeast Asia, but at present it appears that China is much more into these countries than India. So she's asking whether our IPOI or I think Act East is enough policies to reach out.
Surely China's impact in this particular region, keeping in mind that even East Asia, even it might be having rift with Australia and some other Japan, but still its impact is very dominant because of the you can say growth as well as the dominance of China in global geopolitics, and its strength also. It has got definite categorical strengths. Yes, IPOI is again a kind of a cooperation. It's bringing the countries together, the like-minded countries which share common concerns, threats, geopolitical threats, as well as territorial boundary related threats. But China's impact cannot be underscored or cannot be overlooked, I can say, or everybody will agree to it. So any intervention by China in these areas will have an impact on the overall political and economic objective of IPOI. But gradually it has to be seen that how the countries are shaping and making this particular alliance or this grouping or this cooperation more robust and resilient in addressing the emerging challenges, keeping in mind that China is continuing its aggressive and hegemonistic design. So no definite answer as of now, I can say, but there is a need to really stick to the objectives and remain consistent and not vacillating because of this kind of posturing by China. But it is easier said than done. That also I will uh, recognize.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Akshat Maine, you want to ask?
All right, sir. Thank you.
Yes, carry on.
Firstly, thank you so much, Professor Bhattacharya. My question goes like this. At the recently concluded US-China summit in Beijing, noticeably there was no joint statement regarding the status of Taiwan. How do you perceive this in the context of Taiwan being a strategic linchpin, the continued survival of which is an integral factor in preventing the collapse of the existing rules-based model?
The recently convened US-China summit.
He basically is asking that recent US-China summit meeting did not have any joint statement about Taiwan. So he said that Taiwan is a very strategically important. So how we are going to accommodate this new development in the region?
Well, India has been quite sensitive as well as cautious about mentioning China in any of our declaration or joint statements with any other country or even joint declaration. But India has a standpoint that which is like the as far as the sovereignty factor is concerned, uh, all countries should get proper due recognition as far as their sovereignty is concerned, and India does not speak very deliberately about Taiwan in the sense that because of the geostrategic repercussions of those kinds of statements. I mean, at least I have not really found anything very definitive, even if when there are discussions going on or the spokesperson of is speaking in various forums. So in that context, India remains a little bit, tries probably deliberately not to get involved with this China-Taiwan imbroglio that much, keeping in mind that the other geopolitical considerations and its own territorial proximity with China is concerned, keeping in mind that the geostrategic stability of the LSE is also concerned, in my opinion, because everything has got its repercussion everywhere. So that is my understanding.
Next question,
No
Mark.
no definitive answer from my side on this as well.
Mark Mugre. Mugre.
Yes, hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, so I have a question regarding Myanmar. So, how can India navigate the uncertainty or the civil war that is happening in Myanmar? And has it weakened the implementation of the Act East policy for our country? And if you think it's a yes, then how can India act on this? Because Myanmar is the first gateway country to the rest of Southeast Asia. So, how do you perceive this, sir?
Again, my understanding with Myanmar is that there is a very strategic linkage between Myanmar and India in terms of the border, because it has got very close proximity to Manipur and some of the northeastern states. So to that extent, the civil war see, India does not support any unstable situation in the neighborhood, because Myanmar we will consider as a neighborhood because it is having direct border linkage with India. So any instability in the neighborhood, India is always concerned about. Keeping that in mind, civil war in Myanmar is something which is not India's choice at all, in the sense that it should continue there for a longer period of time, because instability in Myanmar will create some kind of instability in the neighborhood regions also, where some of the northeastern states are aligning. Also, Bangladesh is also very close to that entire area. So this is somewhere India will have definitely has disclosed its intention that India will like to see stability and the civil war to end in Myanmar as much as possible quickly. Activist policy, there is a larger focus on activist policy, but these aberrations should go as quickly as possible, and so that the overall intent of activist policy of economic development, shared progress, sustainability, inclusivity, and also geopolitical and geostrategic equilibrium in this larger region is maintained.
Next question from Aditya Nair. Aditya, would you like to ask? Veda, you may read it then.
Aditya's question was, how can the India-East Asia Security Partnership help regional partners build capacity so their coast guards can manage Chinese gray zone pressures independently and safely?
See, security partnership, one is that one aspect of this security partnership is intelligence sharing. Another aspect is defense technology hardware co-development, and also co-production and exporting, like the BrahMos is getting exported to some of the Southeast Asian countries and purchased. So these are some of the aspects which are going to embolden the India-East Asia Security Partnership, keeping in mind that intelligence sharing and cyber security is very, very important in this intelligence sharing aspect, and also to see that capacity building in these areas, not really all the time conventional. I mean, this is not the time of any military intervention or military interface, but technology is very important, intelligence is, sharing is very important, and cyberspace technology development cooperation is very important in keep in the securing security partnership in this particular region in the larger context.
Atman?
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
I think
Uh,
my battery is also very low. It has come. It is giving warning. Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Atman Deshpande. I'm a research intern at ICS. So you
Okay.
mentioned, so in one of your slides, you had mentioned grounded India ASEAN cooperation in the UN CLOS. But India itself has unresolved maritime boundary sort of ambiguities. So does invoking the UN CLOS as a sort of normative foundation risk, so does it risk being seen as sort of selective, especially let's say by claimant states that are a part of the South China Sea sort of conflict right now? So do you think that these states may see India as a free rider on the rule based order? Your comments on the same, please.
See that Indo-ASEAN, India-ASEAN cooperation in UNCLOS is something which is paramountly addressed in the joint statement or plan of action between India and ASEAN. So this way, and keeping in mind that centrality of ASEAN is very important as far as this particular partnership is concerned, in letter and spirit, India is committed towards establishing international rules-based system where UNCLOS also come. Now, see, territorial integration in this particular South China Sea has been an area of deep concern, not only for India, but also for the Southeast Asian countries, because of the fact that why India is concerned, because as I was speaking for Myanmar case as well, that in the extended neighborhood, one of the aspects of activist policy is to ensure stability, peace, and maritime security in the extended neighborhood area. So territorial integrity is one part of the whole thing, or you can say the central domain factor, uh, definitely one part as well, because that leads to other elements of fulfillment. And as far as the UNCLOS is concerned, that will play a critical role, and India is committed towards invoking UNCLOS in this particular region to the extent it is possible under the various cooperative and balancing aspects, as well as cooperation and alliance partnership kind of discussions, and establishing rule-based order. As far as the free rider kind of a thing is concerned, time will say about this thing. But now I do not consider that India will be going as a free rider on the rules-based order. But yes, India will remain vigilant on this aspect of territorial integrity, maritime territorial integrity, and at the same time ensuring that there is peace and stability is basically restored in this particular area to combat the hegemonistic design of China.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. I also want to ask one question. Actually, right now I'm here in Korea, Seoul. So basically, when I talk to people here and foreign policy studying community here, I have this feeling that like the people are not directly but indirectly they want to convey that India is talking too much and is talking about strategic autonomy. To them, actually, to Korean, to Japanese, to many other countries in Southeast Asian countries, it seems that strategic autonomy is not a pragmatic policy. They say there is an opportunist policy. And they say that ultimately, look at any part of the globe where big changes are happening. Rus-Ukraine crisis, say Iran, even in South, we can say this part of the, like say, issue of Taiwan, issue of North Korea, issue of contest between Japan and China, or say Japan and South Korea. On all those issues, basically India is not a player. So if they criticize or rather they challenge me that Indian foreign policy and their partnership with East Asia is too loud but empty, how I am going to answer them? Please help me.
See, yes, in different other forums also,
it seems that Professor Bhattacharya's computer lost out of battery. So I think it's a very interesting discussion, a very good lecture, and we had lots of.
Sir,
So,
one moment, he'll be joining on another
yeah.
device. Just give me a
So
moment.
why can't he join from somebody else's computer?
Yeah, he's just doing that, sir.
Yes,
Just
yes.
give us a moment. Yeah.
So he'll be coming. Professor Bhattacharya is going to come.
Yeah.
And he's going to resume
Yeah.
his, yes,
Yeah.
Professor Bhattacharya.
okay, sorry, my laptop is has run out of
Happens. No
energy.
problem.
See, the point here is that strategic autonomy, as I look at it from my point of view, is that this is an extension of that non-aligned movement idea. And now it is independent foreign policy in the sense that each and every the relationship with the countries will be independent of the relationship with other countries, and based on our and mutual strategic balance of the two countries, the concerns and the interests. Yes, India's, and this has been discussed in other major forums also in discussions by the diplomats, that India's role in some of these areas is a little bit not very much visible, despite the fact that India speaks about these things, but then from that point of view, from the action point of view, probably India is not visible in those areas. One thing, as I see it, is that some of the issues are such complex in that particular domain that even India, if it makes a gets into the system, in that particular conflict and tries to solve the conflict, probably it is difficult to really ascertain how much effective will be that as well. And that might further intervene into the dimensions of the strategic autonomy which India is having with all the countries in that particular region. For example, if I'm talking the Iran-Israel context, now India has got very strong relationship, bilateral relations with Israel as well as with Iran. Now, when these two countries are in conflict and US is also there involved, and also you have to see that the GCC countries, India is having a very robust relationship. Now, if India intervenes in this, to whose side it will be intervening and whose side it will be, because you cannot support all the parties at the same time from a practical point of view that when you are intervening. So probably strategic autonomy itself is binding India not to, as I see, it can be discussed further in academic dimensions, that it binds India or to some extent restricts India to take an open, side that, well, this is correct, this is not correct. We all know what is correct and what is not correct, but openly coming out and getting into that conflict is going to violate or dilute the strategic autonomy itself. Then it will go against this. It will be an antithesis to that strategic autonomy, because India's foreign policy at this moment is such that it is having good relations with most of the countries, or almost all countries. So that is one limitation probably of this strategic autonomy policy, which the other countries might see that, well, India is speaking very loud, but then not coming into the action. But that the dimensions of strategic autonomy itself, I guess, is restricting India to get into and siding with one country or one group in any conflict kind of a thing. So I see that way, that it is going to have a counter impact on the very much the solid baseline of that strategic autonomy. Then it will not remain an autonomy. It will remain something like, it's getting aligned to some groups or alliances or one party, and it is going against the other party. So the dimensions of strategic autonomy itself is probably restricting India to get into action. But India is always saying that diplomatic resolution is something which is the need of the hour. This is not the era of war. That way, India is trying to come into that conflict, but not directly interfering into the nitty-gritties or dimensions of the conflict, as I see in that way, because that is going to dilute the basic infrastructure or framework of strategic autonomy with various countries.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. Any other question? It seems that you have answered all the questions.
Well, I have answered to the extent I am able to answer. But these are open, these questions can be further deliberated. There can be various perspectives and viewpoints on this. But as I see that, which to best of my knowledge and also ability, I have been able to interpret, I have tried to analyze the answers.
No, thank you very much. It was really, I think we had several questions and lots of curiosity about your presentation. It underlines that this is a very important topic, and your presentation basically raised lots of food for thought, what you call, for lots of people who are listening to your lecture. Undoubtedly, India and East Asia, this partnership is very, very important. And I think you tried to argue that it's going to shape New World Order. There are challenges you have also mentioned, and there are opportunities you have also deliberated. So thank you very much for having actually say coming here and delivering this lecture. So now I will give it to Veda.
Thank you, Professor Mishra. It was so nice meeting with you online. I hope that we can meet offline also in some of the forums and discussions, deliberations. And then we will have
Definitely.
further longer type of discussions, academic collaboration,
Yes, thank
and
you.
research
Yes,
collaboration
definitely.
as well.
Definitely will have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With this, we come to an end of today's seminar. We thank Professor Bhattacharya and Professor Mishra for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their valuable time. We also thank the audience for joining us today. The video of today's seminar shall be available on the ICS YouTube channel. We would like to invite you to the upcoming Wednesday seminar titled Parallel Paths, Divergent Agendas, India and China at the World Trade Organization, scheduled for the 10th of June. Further information regarding the event can be found on the ICS website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.